So this video is on the topic of endosymbiosis. This video links to origins of life, the major types of life in the cell theory, so you can watch those in conjunction. The key learning here is about a process called endosymbiosis, which has a complicated name, but really straightforward. Endosymbiosis is meaning endo, within, symbiosis, living together. And so it's about a theory where a cell's evolved by one type of cell living inside another. I'll take you through the process, but here's the main learning outcomes. We have to, first of all, understand that the earliest form of cellular life on Earth was a cell type that we would assume is prokaryotic. This is the simple type of cell that has no nucleus, and that these existed before the eukaryotic cell type. I'm going to look at some of the evidence around that and then explain how that's likely to have happened. So, really early evidence of single-celled life on Earth. One good example is stromatolites, which are a type of, well, it just looks like a rock, but actually it's a fossil made up of bacterial or prokaryotic cells building up over time millions and millions of years ago. And these are found in Western Australia. Evidence like this is found around the world, showing that there was some simple form of life about 3.5 billion years ago. These simple ancestral cells here that would have arisen from some sort of proto-cell before we had a real cell, maybe RNA with membrane around it, as was discussed in the Origins of Life video. So these really simple cell types, as soon as they start reproducing, they're going to be affected by the processes of evolution and change and adapt, and by natural selection form different types of cell. So what we're talking about here is that life evolved into a diversity of cell types, and there's some ancient single cell types that we have that are called bacteria and archaea. And the third type of cell that we have is eukaryotic cells, and this is what we're going to look at a little bit as to how these formed. These three types of cell, bacteria, archaea, and the eukaryotic cells, are the three main branches of the tree of life. So as we know, there are thousands of different species on Earth at the moment, but as we start to put those together and go back in time, there was a single last universal common ancestral cell somewhere around here that divided off into three types of cells: the bacterial, archaea, and eukaryotic cell domains of life, and then those have branched further and further. So plants and animals are of this eukaryotic cell type. So how did that arise? Well, the evidence shows that it arose through a process of endosymbiosis, living inside another cell. So symbiosis is when two organisms live together. Endosymbiosis is one where an organism or a cell lives inside another cell. Here's a couple of videos to take you through that, and here's a bit of a process. So this is how it might have happened. So first of all, you have a cell type that's before we have any eukaryotic cells. This would be a prokaryotic cell. Evolves to have some sort of nucleus to contain that DNA material and keep it safe. And this is the endosymbiosis here, as it's going around engulfing, eating other things in its environment. And this time it swallows up another cell, an aerobic bacterial cell. Rather than digesting that though, this aerobic bacterial cell ends up living inside it and becomes the organelle, the mitochondrion. So it sounds a bit crazy, but yeah, the theory is that the organelles, like mitochondria, are actually bacterial cells that have been swallowed up by a eukaryotic cell and now live inside it. Same sort of thing with chloroplasts. Here's a photosynthetic bacterial cell that gets swallowed and becomes a chloroplast. So, like I said, sounds a bit crazy, but there's evidence that supports it, and here's the lines of evidence. First of all, mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own circular DNA. So if you look inside these organelles, little organs within the eukaryotic cell, they've got their own circle of DNA, just like a prokaryotic cell has its own little circle of DNA. Secondly, they have their own ribosomes. So they have ribosomes that look like bacterial ribosomes. So again, another line of evidence that these little organelles used to be independent living cells. They divide by binary fission, just like prokaryotic cells, independently of the eukaryotic cell cycle. So not only are they living inside this cell, but they're happily growing, dividing, all on their own, multiplying within that cell, and then some of them end up in each daughter cell when the eukaryotic cell divides. And lastly, they have a double membrane. So why is that important? Well, you'd think if a bacterial cell with its own membrane gets swallowed up by a eukaryotic cell and goes inside a vesicle within that, then you've got two layers of membrane. The inside one was the bacterial cell membrane, and the outside one was the membrane that the eukaryotic cell put around it. So this double membrane, again, evidence that one was swallowed up inside the other. This is all discussed in chapter 20 on those pages, and there's 3 videos there that can help you out. And of course, ask me questions if you have any.